Marcus Chun had been drifting through the Kepler sector for 3 months when his cargo hauler's proximity alarms screamed to life. The salvage business wasn't glamorous, but it kept him fed and his ship fueled. What he found floating in the debris field of what looked like a luxury yacht made his breath catch in his throat. The escape pod was barely intact, its hull scarred by plasma burns and micrometeorite impacts. Through the cracked viewport, he could see a figure slumped over the controls. Marcus didn't hesitate. His mechanical arm, a relic from his days as a ship engineer, whirred to life as he maneuvered his hauler's cargo bay to dock with the pod. The moment he cracked the seal, he knew this wasn't going to be a simple rescue. The being inside was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin had an ethereal blue-silver shimmer, and delicate crystalline structures grew from her temples like a crown. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow and irregular. More concerning were the injection marks along her arms and the strange metal collar around her neck that pulsed with a sickly green light. Marcus had seen enough slavery operations to recognize the signs. Someone had been using this woman as a test subject. His scanners detected trace amounts of unknown compounds in her bloodstream, and the collar was clearly some kind of neural inhibitor. Without thinking twice, he carried her to his ship's medical bay. The next 12 hours were the longest of his life. Her vital signs crashed twice, and each time Marcus thought he'd lost her. He'd been a combat medic during the Frontier Wars before he lost his arm, and those skills came flooding back. He worked frantically, flushing toxins from her system and trying to stabilize her condition. The collar was the biggest problem. Every time he tried to remove it, it sent painful electrical pulses through her body. It took him 6 hours and 3 different approaches before he finally managed to disable the damn thing. The moment it powered down, she took her first full breath since he'd found her. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shifted color like liquid mercury. She tried to speak, but only managed to whisper in a language he didn't recognize. Marcus activated his universal translator, and her words became clear. "Please," she said, her voice barely audible. "They cannot find me. They must not find me." "Who?" Marcus asked, adjusting the medical scanner to get a better read on her condition. "Who's looking for you?" "The hegemony," she replied, trying to sit up despite his protests. "I am Princess Lyralii of the Vegan Dominion. They have been using me to perfect their biological weapons. If they recapture me..." She didn't need to finish. Marcus had heard whispers about the hegemony's experiments. Biological weapons that could wipe out entire species while leaving infrastructure intact. The thought made his stomach turn. "Well, Your Highness," he said, trying to keep his tone light despite the gravity of the situation. "You're safe now. I'm Marcus Chun, and this is my ship, the Wanderer. Nobody's taking you anywhere you don't want to go." Lyralii stared at him for a long moment, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. "You would protect me? But I am nothing to you. My people have no alliance with humanity." Marcus shrugged, checking her foreline. "Where I come from, we don't leave people to suffer if we can help it. Doesn't matter what species they are." Over the next few days, as Lyralii recovered, she told Marcus more about her situation. She was the youngest daughter of Queen Estra of the Vegan Dominion, a peaceful empire known for their advanced medical technology and artistic achievements. The hegemony had kidnapped her during a diplomatic mission, believing that her unique physiology made her the perfect test subject for their weapons program. "My people have a natural resistance to most biological agents," she explained as they shared a meal in his small galley. The hegemony thought that if they could break down that resistance, they could create weapons that would affect any species. And did they succeed? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Lyralii nodded grimly. The final test was scheduled for tomorrow. They were going to inject me with something they called the Omega strain. According to their scientists, it would have killed me in minutes, proving that their weapon could eliminate anyone. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He'd saved her with less than 24 hours to spare. As they traveled toward the Outer Rim territories where Marcus hoped they could find sanctuary, he learned more about the princess. Despite her royal status, she was remarkably down-to-earth. She insisted on helping with ship maintenance, quickly learning to operate the Wanderer's systems. She had a quick wit and an infectious laugh that brightened the normally lonely confines of a ship. But their peaceful journey couldn't last forever. The attack came without warning. Marcus was in the engine room, showing Lyralii how to calibrate the fusion reactor when his ship's computer announced incoming vessels. 3 sleek hegemony pursuit ships had found them, their black hulls bristling with weapons. "Marcus Chun," came a voice over the comm system, cold and mechanical. "You are harboring stolen hegemony property. Surrender the specimen immediately, and you will be allowed to depart unharmed." Marcus looked at Lyralii, seeing the terror in her shifting eyes. She was gripping the reactor console so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "This is Captain Chun of the independent vessel Wanderer," he replied, moving to the bridge with Lyralii close behind. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a salvage operator heading to port. We are aware of the princess's presence aboard your vessel. You have 30 seconds to comply." Lyralii stepped forward, reaching for the comm panel. "Perhaps I should surrender. You have done enough for me, and I will not see you harmed for my sake." Marcus gently pushed her hand away from the controls. "Not happening, princess. I told you before, nobody's taking you anywhere you don't want to go." The lead hegemony ship opened fire, plasma bolts searing past the Wanderer's hull. Marcus threw his ship into a series of evasive maneuvers, but he knew it was hopeless. His cargo hauler was tough, but not built for combat. The hegemony ships were faster, better armed, and there were 3 of them. "Marcus," Lyralii said urgently, "there is something you should know. If they recapture me, it will not just be my life at stake. The weapon they developed using my blood, they plan to use it against your species as well. Humanity is next on their list for subjugation." That changed everything. This wasn't just about saving one person anymore. Marcus's mind raced as he dodged another volley of plasma fire. He thought about the refugee camps he'd seen on the Outer Worlds, filled with survivors of hegemony pacification campaigns. He thought about his sister's family on New Terra, living their quiet lives, unaware of the threat bearing down on them. "Computer," he called out, "set course for the Magellan Nebula. Maximum burn." "Marcus, that is a dead system," Lyralii protested. "There is nothing there but radiation and asteroid fields." "Exactly," Marcus replied grimly. "But I know those fields better than anyone. I've been salvaging wrecks there for years." The Wanderer plunged into the swirling gases and debris of the nebula, the hegemony ships following close behind. The radiation played havoc with their sensors, but Marcus navigated by memory and instinct. He led his pursuers deeper into the maze of dead ships and floating rocks, waiting for his moment. It came when they passed the hulk of an old Alliance dreadnought, one Marcus had stripped for parts months earlier. He knew exactly which fuel cells he'd left behind, and exactly what would happen if someone hit them with a plasma bolt. "Hold on," he warned Lyralii, then spun the Wanderer in a tight loop, putting the dreadnought between his ship and the lead pursuer. The hegemony captain took the bait, firing at what he thought was the Wanderer. His plasma bolt struck the dreadnought's remaining fuel cells, and the ancient ship went up like a star going nova. The explosion tore through the lead pursuit ship and severely damaged a second. But Marcus's victory was short-lived. The third ship was still intact, and now very angry. It came at them with everything it had, plasma cannons firing continuously. The Wanderer's shield buckled and failed. Hull plates began to glow red-hot under the onslaught. "I have to try something," Marcus muttered, pushing his ship's engines past their safety limits. "It's crazy, but it might work." "What are you doing?" Lyralii asked, watching the engine readouts climb into the danger zone. "Something I learned during the war," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across the controls. "If you can't outrun them and you can't outfight them, you change the rules of the game." He aimed the Wanderer straight at a massive asteroid, one he knew was mostly hollow from previous mining operations. At the last possible second, he killed the engines and fired his maneuvering thrusters, sending the ship into a controlled tumble through a narrow cave system that honeycombed the asteroid. The hegemony ship, traveling at high speed, couldn't follow. It slammed into the asteroid's surface with devastating force, its pilot never having expected such a desperate maneuver. As the Wanderer emerged from the other side of the asteroid, battered but intact, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. They had survived, but he knew this was just the beginning. The hegemony wouldn't give up easily, and now they knew that a human ship was protecting their property. That was incredible, Lyralii said, looking at him with something approaching awe. I have never seen anyone fly like that. Marcus shrugged, beginning damage assessment procedures. Sometimes you have to get creative. Now let's see what kind of shape we're in and figure out our next move. As they worked to repair the ship, neither of them noticed the small tracking device that had attached itself to the Wanderer's hull during the battle. The hegemony had learned from their first encounter with the stubborn human. This time, they would be ready. The repairs took 3 days, hidden in the shadow of a drifting space station graveyard. Marcus had chosen the location carefully. The radiation from the old reactor cores would mask their heat signature, and the twisted metal provided excellent camouflage. As he worked alongside Lyralii to patch the hull breaches, he found himself impressed by her quick grasp of human technology. Your people's engineering is quite different from ours, she commented, sealing a plasma burn with practiced efficiency. More direct. Less elegant, perhaps, but incredibly robust. We learned to build things tough, Marcus replied, running diagnostics on the shield generators. Had to, after the Frontier Wars. Can't rely on pretty solutions when someone's shooting at you. During their time together, Marcus learned more about vegan society. They were indeed peaceful, but not naive. Their pacifism was a choice born from strength, not weakness. Lyralii herself was trained in several forms of combat, though her people's fighting styles emphasized defense and redirection rather than aggression. Show me, Marcus said during a break in their repairs. She demonstrated a flowing martial art that seemed to blend dance with deadly precision. Her movements were hypnotic, like water flowing around obstacles. When she finished, Marcus applauded. Beautiful, he said sincerely. But how effective is it in real combat? By way of answer, Lyralii moved faster than his enhanced reflexes could track. One moment she was 3 meters away. The next she had somehow gotten behind him and tapped him gently on the neck with her finger. If I had wished to harm you, she said softly, you would already be unconscious. Marcus rubbed his neck, grinning. Point taken, princess. Their moment of levity was interrupted by the Wanderer's proximity alarms. Marcus rushed to the sensor station, his blood running cold as he saw what was approaching. Not one ship this time, but an entire hegemony battle group. 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and a command carrier that was easily the size of Small Moon. How did they find us? Lyralii asked, her face pale with fear. Marcus was already running full diagnostics on their systems when he found it, a microscopic tracking device attached to their hull near the engine exhaust ports. He cursed himself for not thinking to check for such devices after their last encounter. We need to move now, he said, starting the engine sequences. But even as the Wanderer powered up, he knew it was hopeless. There was no way his ship could outrun an entire battle group. Marcus, Lyralii said quietly, there is something I must tell you. Something I have kept hidden. She moved to the communication console and began entering a complex sequence of commands. Suddenly, the ship's systems came alive with new displays and readouts that Marcus had never seen before. What is this? He asked, staring at the alien interface that had somehow integrated itself with the ship's computer. When Hegemony captured me, they did not know about this, Lyralii explained, her fingers moving rapidly across the controls. It is a neural interface implant, biological rather than mechanical. My mother had it installed when I reached adulthood, in case I ever needed to call for help. The display showed a star map with a pulsing signal originating from their location. But, more importantly, it showed response signals, dozens of them, moving fast toward their position. I have activated our emergency beacon, Lyralii continued. My mother's fleet is coming, but they're still 6 hours away. We need to survive that long. Marcus looked at the hegemony force bearing down on them. Then, at the princess who had just revealed she was far more important than she'd let on. Your mother sent a rescue fleet? How big are we talking about? The Vegan Dominion's first fleet, Lyralii replied matter-of-factly. 200 ships, including the Queen's flagship, Starlight's Edge. Despite their desperate situation, Marcus couldn't help but whistle in appreciation. Well, that's going to make for an interesting reunion. The lead hegemony ships were already firing, their long-range missiles streaking toward the Wanderer's position. Marcus threw his ship into evasive maneuvers, weaving through the graveyard of dead stations and derelict ships. But there were too many missiles, and his damaged shields couldn't take much more punishment. "I have an idea," Lyralii said suddenly, studying the tactical display. "But you're not going to like it. At this point, I'm open to suggestions. We use the graveyard itself as a weapon. Many of these old stations still have volatile fuel reserves and unstable reactor cores. If we could trigger a chain reaction," Marcus caught on immediately, "we turn this entire sector into a minefield. But that would require precise timing and someone would have to manually trigger each explosion," Lyralii finished. "Someone with a neural interface capable of interfacing with dozens of different systems simultaneously." The plan was insane, but it might actually work. Marcus began plotting a course through the graveyard while Lyralii established connections with every derelict station and ship within a 50-kilometer radius. The hegemony forces, confident in their overwhelming numbers, followed them deeper into the maze of dead metal. "Now," Lyralii said, her eyes closed in concentration as she interfaced with the various systems. The graveyard erupted in a symphony of explosions. Fusion reactors went critical, fuel reserves ignited, and ammunition stores detonated in brilliant flowers of destruction. The carefully orchestrated chain reaction swept through the hegemony formation like a tidal wave of fire. When the explosions died down, more than half the hegemony force had been destroyed. The survivors were scattered, their formation broken, their commander's arrogance replaced by wary respect for the human who had just turned their numerical advantage into a liability. "Impressive," came a voice over the communication channel. "But you have merely delayed the inevitable. We are still more than sufficient to capture our prize." Marcus was about to respond when new contacts appeared on his sensors. 3 ships, sleek and organic-looking, emerged from hyperspace near their position. They were clearly vegan vessels, but much smaller than the rescue fleet Lyralii had called for. "Princess Lyralii," came a melodious voice over the comm, speaking in the vegan language. "This is Captain Serenade of the Royal Guard. Your mother sent us ahead to extract you." Lyralii's face lit up with relief, but Marcus noticed something wrong. The timing was off. These ships had arrived too quickly, and they hadn't come from the direction of vegan space. "Princess," he said quietly, "ask them for the Queen's personal verification code." Lyralii gave him a curious look, but did as he suggested. The pause that followed was telling. "There is no time for such formalities," the voice replied, now speaking in accented standard. "We must extract you immediately before the hegemony reinforcements arrive." Marcus's suspicions were confirmed. He grabbed Lyralii's arm and pulled her away from the communication console just as the 3 ships opened fire on their position. They weren't vegan Royal Guard at all. They were hegemony vessels using stolen vegan technology. "How did you know?" Lyralii asked as Marcus threw the Wanderer into another series of desperate evasive maneuvers. "The timing was wrong, and Real Royal Guard would never question a royal security protocol," Marcus replied, pouring power to the engines. "Plus, your people's ships moved differently. Those ships flew like hegemony pilots, trying to imitate your technology. The fake Royal Guard ships were fast and maneuverable, clearly designed for stealth and infiltration rather than direct combat. But they were also limited in firepower, apparently built to capture rather than destroy." Marcus used this to his advantage, forcing them into prolonged chases through the debris field where their superior speed was neutralized by the need for precise navigation. But even as he outmaneuvered the infiltrators, the surviving hegemony battle group was reorganizing. They had learned from their earlier mistakes and were now advancing more cautiously, using long-range scanners to avoid the remaining hazards in the graveyard. "Marcus," Lyralii said, monitoring the approaching forces, "even if the real rescue fleet arrives in time, there will be a battle. Many will die because of me." "People die in wars anyway," Marcus replied grimly. "At least this time it's to save someone worth saving and stop a weapon that could kill millions." As if summoned by his words, space around them suddenly filled with new arrivals. But these weren't the elegant vegan ships Marcus expected. Instead, a ragtag fleet of human vessels dropped out of hyperspace. Cargo haulers, mining ships, passenger liners, and a few genuine warships. Every ship bore the same markings: a blue star on a white field, the symbol of the Independent World Alliance. Marcus Chun, came a familiar voice over the comm. This is Admiral Sarah Martinez aboard the IWS Freedom. We received your distress signal and came as fast as we could. Marcus's jaw dropped. Sarah Martinez had been his commanding officer during the Frontier Wars, the woman who had saved his life when he lost his arm. They had lost touch after the war ended, but somehow she had received his emergency beacon. How did you? Marcus started to ask. That emergency transponder I gave you before mustering out, Admiral Martinez replied. You never used it, so I figured you were either dead or too stubborn to ask for help. When it finally activated, I knew you must be in serious trouble. The human fleet wasn't large, maybe 30 ships total, but they moved with the coordination of veterans. Many of the crews, Marcus realized, were probably former military like himself, people who had served during the Frontier Wars and understood the value of protecting the innocent. The hegemony commander, faced with a three-way battle he hadn't expected, made the mistake of dividing his forces. Half his ships moved to engage the human fleet while the rest continued their pursuit of the Wanderer. It was exactly the wrong decision. Admiral Martinez's fleet might have been smaller and less advanced than the hegemony force, but they fought with a ferocity that took their enemies by surprise. Human tactics emphasized adaptability and unconventional thinking, traits that served them well against the more rigid hegemony doctrine. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself in the strange position of being protected by two different fleets while still being hunted by a third. The fake Royal Guard ships had been forced to break off their pursuit when the human fleet arrived, but they were still prowling the edges of the battle, waiting for an opportunity to complete their mission. Princess, Marcus said as he watched the battle unfold around them. How much longer until your mother's fleet arrives? Lyralii checked her neural interface. 3 hours, perhaps less. They have detected the battle and are pushing their engines beyond safe limits. 3 hours felt like an eternity as Marcus watched ships on both sides take damage and casualties. The human fleet was holding its own, but they were being slowly overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology. Admiral Martinez's flagship took a direct hit to its engine section, and several of the converted civilian ships were already showing signs of severe damage. That was when Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Lyralii, he said, turning to face the princess, I need you to teach me how to use your neural interface. Not the biological part, but the control protocols. If I can interface with the hegemony ships the same way you did with those derelicts. That is extremely dangerous, Lyralii protested. Human neural patterns are not compatible with our technology. The feedback could kill you. Maybe, Marcus acknowledged. But, right now, good people are dying to protect us. I can't just hide here and watch that happen. Lyralii looked into his eyes and saw the same determination that had led him to rescue her in the first place. She nodded slowly and began explaining the interface protocols, knowing that she might be helping him commit suicide, but understanding that sometimes courage demanded the ultimate sacrifice. As Marcus prepared to attempt something that no human had ever tried before, neither he nor Lyralii noticed that the Queen's flagship had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, accompanied by the most powerful fleet in known space. Queen Estra had arrived, and she was not pleased with what she found. The neural interface process was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. As Lyralii guided the biomechanical tendrils toward the neural ports behind his ear, he felt a strange, tingling sensation that quickly escalated to something approaching electric fire running through his nervous system. The pain is normal, Lyralii assured him, though her voice was strained with concern. Human neural pathways are more aggressive than ours. The interface is trying to adapt. Marcus gritted his teeth as alien technology merged with his consciousness. Suddenly, his awareness expanded far beyond the confines of his ship. He could sense every piece of electronics within a 50-kilometer radius, the damaged human ships, the advancing hegemony vessels, even the hiding infiltrators. But, more importantly, he could feel the vulnerabilities in their systems. I can see them, he whispered, his eyes taking on the same shifting quality as Lyralii's. All of them. Their shield generators have a feedback loop I can exploit. Their navigation systems are using an outdated encryption protocol. Working together, Marcus and Lyralii launched a cyber assault unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human creativity and aggression combined with vegan precision and technical expertise proved to be a devastating combination. Hegemony ships found their own weapons turning against them, their shields failing at critical moments, their navigation systems sending them careening into debris fields. The tide of battle turned dramatically. Admiral Martinez, seeing enemy ships suddenly becoming vulnerable to her fleet's attacks, pressed her advantage. The human ships, many of them damaged and outgunned, fought with renewed vigor as they realized they actually had a chance of winning. But the effort was taking its toll on Marcus. Blood was seeping from his nose and ears as the alien technology pushed his human nervous system past its limits. Lyralii watched in growing alarm as his vital signs became increasingly erratic. "Marcus, you must stop," she pleaded. "Your brain cannot handle much more of this." "Just a little longer," he gasped, maintaining his connections to multiple enemy ships simultaneously. "I can end this." It was then that the Queen's fleet arrived. The vegan Royal Navy was a sight to behold. 200 ships materialized out of hyperspace with perfect precision, their organic-looking hulls gleaming like living jewels against the backdrop of stars. At their head was the Starlight's Edge, Queen Estra's personal flagship, a vessel so beautiful it seemed more like a work of art than a weapon of war. The Hegemony commander, suddenly, faced with overwhelming odds, attempted to negotiate. "Your Majesty," his voice crackled over the communication channels. "We are merely attempting to reclaim stolen property. Surrender the specimen, and we will withdraw." The response came not in words, but in action. The vegan fleet opened fire with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Beams of coherent energy that flickered through multiple dimensions, projectiles that phased through shields as if they didn't exist, and area effect weapons that simply caused enemy ships to cease functioning without any visible damage. The remaining Hegemony forces were systematically dismantled in less than 10 minutes. Not destroyed. The vegans were too precise for such crude methods, but rather disabled so thoroughly that they would pose no further threat. It was a demonstration of power that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Daughter," came Queen Estra's voice over a private channel, speaking in the vegan language. "Are you unharmed?" "I am well, Mother," Lyralii replied, her relief evident in her voice. "But my rescuer requires immediate medical attention." Marcus was indeed in bad shape. The neural interface had finally overloaded his system, and he had collapsed at his station, convulsing as alien technology fought to separate itself from his brain. Lyralii worked frantically to safely disconnect the interface, knowing that a mistake could leave him brain-damaged or worse. "Princess Lyralii," came another voice over the comm, this one speaking accented standard. "This is Captain Meridian of the Royal Guard. We are preparing to beam you aboard the flagship." "No," Lyralii said firmly. "Marcus Chun saved my life and risked everything to protect me. If I am to be evacuated, he comes with me." There was a pause, then Queen Estra's voice returned. "Very well. Bring the human." The vegan medical bay aboard the Starlight's Edge was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, even in his semi-conscious state. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and healing energy flowed through crystalline conduits that fed into treatment pods that looked more grown than built. As vegan medics worked to repair the damage done by the neural interface, Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness. In his lucid moments, he caught glimpses of Lyralii arguing with someone, a tall, regal figure whose presence seemed to command the entire room. "You took a tremendous risk, daughter," Queen Estra was saying. "Activating the emergency beacon could have led the Hegemony to our territory, and involving this human in our affairs." "Marcus Chun is not just this human," Lyralii replied with surprising vehemence. "He saved my life when he had every reason to simply ignore my distress signal. He protected me when it would have been safer to surrender me. He risked his own life to save the lives of his own people who came to help us. How can we simply dismiss such courage and honor?" Queen Estra studied the unconscious human with eyes that seemed to see far more than most beings. "He is different from what I expected. Human behavior is typically more pragmatic. That is what makes him remarkable," Lyralii said softly. He acted not from duty or obligation, but from simple compassion. Is that not what our own philosophy teaches? When Marcus finally regained full consciousness 3 days later, he found himself in a private chamber aboard the vegan flagship. The room was elegant beyond description, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal and furniture that adjusted itself to his presence. But what caught his attention immediately was the figure standing by the viewport, a woman who looked like an older, more regal version of Lyralii. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, attempting to sit up and immediately regretting it as his head spun. "Rest, Marcus Chun," Queen Estra said, her voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. "You have done quite enough heroic acts for 1 week." As Marcus recovered, he learned more about the political implications of what had transpired. The hegemony's attempt to develop biological weapons using Lyralii as a test subject was just the beginning of a larger plot to subjugate or eliminate several peaceful species. The vegan dominion, despite their pacifist nature, could not ignore such a direct threat. "War is coming," Queen Estra explained during one of their conversations. "The hegemony has grown too bold, too confident in their power. They believe that their military might makes them invincible, but they underestimate the strength that comes from alliance and cooperation." "What about humanity?" Marcus asked. "We're not exactly a unified species. The Independent World Alliance is just one faction, and we've got our own problems with the Earth Federation and the Outer Colonies Confederation." "Perhaps," the Queen said thoughtfully, "it is time for humanity to understand what they could accomplish if they worked together. Your species has remarkable potential, Marcus Chen. You have shown courage, adaptability, and a capacity for sacrifice that is rare in the galaxy. But you're also fractured, divided by old grudges and petty politics." Over the following days, Marcus watched as Queen Estra worked to build a coalition unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Representatives from dozens of species came aboard the Starlight's Edge, some in person, others via quantum communication links. There were the crystalline Zarathi, whose technology could manipulate matter at the atomic level. The gaseous Nebulae Collective, whose ships could phase in and out of normal space. The insectoid hive clans, whose coordinated tactics were legendary. But it was the humans who proved to be the most challenging to unite. Admiral Martinez represented the Independent World Alliance, but there were also delegations from the Earth Federation Navy and the Outer Colonies Defense Force. The three human factions had been at odds for decades, and their representatives seemed more interested in scoring political points than in addressing the hegemony threat. "You have to understand," Admiral Martinez explained to Marcus during a private conversation, "the Earth Federation still thinks they can negotiate with the hegemony. They believe that if they offer enough concessions, they can avoid a war." "And the Outer Colonies?" Marcus asked. "They think this is an inner worlds problem," Martinez replied with obvious frustration. "They're convinced that if they keep their heads down and don't get involved, the hegemony will leave them alone." It was Lyralii who suggested the solution. "Perhaps what they need is to see the evidence for themselves," she said. "The hegemony research data that was in my system when you rescued me. It contains their complete plans for humanity's subjugation." The data was horrifying in its scope and detail. The hegemony hadn't just been developing biological weapons. They had been conducting a comprehensive study of human psychology, sociology, and military capabilities. Their plan wasn't simply conquest. It was complete cultural destruction followed by enslavement. When the human representatives saw the evidence, their petty squabbles suddenly seemed insignificant. The Earth Federation delegate, a stern woman named Ambassador Chun, no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname, stared at the data in shock. "They have detailed plans for the destruction of Earth's ecosystem," she said quietly. "They know about our food production centers, our population distributions, our defense networks. This level of intelligence gathering could only have been accomplished over decades." The Outer Colonies representative, a grizzled former military officer named Colonel Zhang, was equally stunned. "They've identified every major asteroid mining operation, every trade route, every habitable world we've settled. There's nowhere to hide from this." It was Admiral Martinez who voiced what they were all thinking. "We've been so busy fighting each other that we never noticed the real enemy studying us." The revelation led to something unprecedented in human history: the signing of the Terran Unity Accords aboard an alien vessel. For the first time since leaving Earth, all major human factions agreed to work together toward a common goal. But even as the coalition grew stronger, Marcus found himself dealing with a personal crisis. His experience with a neural interface had changed him in ways that the vegan medics didn't fully understand. He could still sense electronic systems around him, though much more weakly than during the battle. More concerning, he seemed to have developed a form of telepathic sensitivity to Lyraliai's emotions. It appears that the interface created a permanent neural link between you, explained Dr. Salas, the Queen's personal physician. Such a phenomenon has never been documented between our species before. The long-term implications are unknown. Marcus found the situation both fascinating and terrifying. He could sense when Lyraliai was in distress, feel echoes of her thoughts and emotions. It was an intimacy that neither of them had asked for, but which seemed to be growing stronger each day. "I can feel your fear," Lyraliai said to him one evening as they stood together on the flagship's observation deck. "You are afraid that this connection makes you less human somehow." Marcus considered denying it, but realized there was no point. She would know if he was lying. "It's not that exactly. It's more. I've always prided myself on my independence, making my own choices, going my own way. Now I can feel someone else's emotions as if they were my own. What happens to my identity when the line between us becomes too blurred?" Lyraliai placed her hand on his arm, and through their link, he felt her compassion and understanding. "Perhaps," she said softly, "the question is not what we might lose, but what we might become together." Before Marcus could respond to her words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Captain Meridian's voice echoed through the corridors. "All hands to battle stations. Hegemony reinforcements have arrived in the system. They are demanding the return of their property and threatening to destroy the entire coalition fleet if we do not comply." As Marcus and Lyraliai rushed to the bridge, both of them could feel through their neural link that this confrontation would be different from the previous battles. The Hegemony had sent their most powerful fleet, led by Supreme Admiral Korthak himself, a being whose reputation for ruthlessness was legendary throughout the galaxy. The real war was about to begin. Supreme Admiral Korthak's fleet was a nightmare made manifest. 300 ships materialized out of hyperspace with geometric precision, their black hulls seeming to absorb the light of nearby stars. At their center was the Entropy's Edge, Korthak's personal dreadnought, a vessel so massive it created its own gravitational field. The transmissions that followed made the Coalition's blood run cold. "I am Supreme Admiral Korthak of the Hegemony's 3rd Extermination Fleet," came a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "You harbor stolen property belonging to the Hegemony. Return the specimen known as Princess Lyraliai within 1 standard hour, or I will demonstrate why my species has conquered 47 star systems." Queen Estra stood on the bridge of the Starlight's Edge, her normally serene expression hardened with resolve. Around her, the Coalition fleet, vegan, human, Zarathi, and a dozen other species, prepared for what might be their final battle. "Mother," Lyraliai said quietly, approaching the Queen with Marcus at her side, "perhaps I should surrender myself. The cost of protecting me may be too high." "Absolutely not," Marcus interjected before the Queen could respond. "We've been through this before, Princess. Nobody gets handed over to those butchers." Queen Estra studied the tactical display showing the opposing fleets. The Hegemony force outnumbered them nearly 2-1, and their ships were built purely for destruction. But her expression remained calm. "Admiral Korthak," she replied over the open channel, "I am Queen Estra of the Vegan Dominion. My daughter is not property to be returned. She is a free being under the protection of the Coalition of Free Worlds. If you wish to take her, you'll have to go through all of us." Korthak's laughter was like the sound of a ship's hull tearing apart. "So be it. Your pacifist philosophy has made you weak, Estra. Today, I will demonstrate the superiority of the Hegemony's way." The first wave of the attack came not from ships, but from something far more insidious. Viral programs began infiltrating the Coalition's computer systems, attempting to shut down life support, navigation, and weapons control simultaneously. It was the same cyber warfare technique that had allowed the hegemony to conquer so many worlds without firing a shot. But they hadn't counted on Marcus. The neural link with Lyralii had left him permanently changed, and as the enemy programs invaded the Coalition's networks, he felt them like physical pain. Without thinking, he reached out with his enhanced consciousness and began fighting the digital invasion. "What are you doing?" Dr. Salas asked in alarm as Marcus suddenly convulsed at his station, blood streaming from his nose. "Buying us time," Marcus gasped, his awareness split between dozens of different computer systems. Their viruses are sophisticated, but they're designed to fight conventional defenses. They don't know how to handle human intuition. Working alongside Lyralii through their neural link, Marcus began turning the hegemony's own cyber weapons against them. Where their viral programs expected logical, predictable responses, they found chaotic human creativity that confounded their programming. Soon, the digital tide turned as Coalition systems began adapting and evolving faster than the enemy programs could compensate. The cyber battle was won, but it was only the first round. Korthak's fleet began advancing, their weapons charging for a conventional assault that would test every ship in the Coalition fleet. All ships, Admiral Martinez broadcast from her flagship, "Remember your training. Stay mobile, use the environment, and watch each other's backs. Today we show the galaxy what cooperation can accomplish." The battle that followed was unlike anything recorded in galactic history. The hegemony fought with overwhelming firepower and disciplined formations, their ships moving in perfect coordination to concentrate fire on individual targets. But the Coalition fought with something the hegemony had never encountered: true tactical cooperation between multiple species. Zarathi ships would phase out of reality just as hegemony missiles reached them, only to rematerialize behind enemy vessels. Vegan ships used their advanced shields to protect human vessels, while the humans' more aggressive tactics created openings for their allies. The gaseous beings of the Nebulae Collective proved impossible to target conventionally, slipping through solid matter to attack from unexpected angles. But for every tactical advantage the Coalition possessed, the hegemony had raw power. Their ships were heavily armored and armed with weapons that could crack planets. Slowly, but steadily, Coalition vessels began falling under the relentless assault. It was during the height of the battle that Marcus noticed something troubling. Despite the fierce fighting, none of the hegemony's most powerful ships were engaging directly. They hung back, almost as if they were waiting for something. "Lyralii," he said, touching her arm to strengthen their mental link. "Something's wrong. Korthak isn't committing his full force. Why would he hold back?" Through their connection, Lyralii shared his concern and extended her own senses through the ship's systems. What she discovered made her gasp in horror. "Marcus, they're not trying to win this battle. They're buying time for something else. I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the outer system. They're charging some kind of superweapon." The realization hit them both at the same time. This entire battle was a distraction. While the Coalition was focused on the fleet engagement, the hegemony was preparing to unleash something that would destroy everything in the system. "Mother," Lyralii called out, rushing to Queen Estra's side. "They have a planet-killer weapon charging in the outer system. This battle is just meant to keep us here while they prepare to destroy us all." Queen Estra's expression didn't change, but Marcus could feel the shock and concern radiating through the neural link from Lyralii. "How long do we have?" the Queen asked. 20 minutes, perhaps less," Lyralii replied after consulting the sensor data. It was then that Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. "I can stop it," he said quietly. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at him. "Marcus," Lyralii said through their link, "what are you thinking?" "The neural interface changed me," Marcus explained, his mind racing through possibilities. "I can connect to their systems, but it has to be a direct connection. I have to get to their command ship." "That's suicide," Admiral Martinez interjected over the comm link. "The Entropy's edge is protected by 3 layers of destroyers. No single ship could penetrate that defense." "Not a ship," Marcus replied, looking at Queen Estra. "A person. Your people have personal stealth technology, don't they? Something that could get me close enough to board their flagship?" "Even if such a thing were possible," the Queen said slowly, The neural strain of interfacing directly with hegemony technology could kill you. Their systems are designed to be hostile to outside interference. Marcus felt Lyraliai's terror through their link at the thought of him attempting such a mission. But he also felt her understanding. This might be their only chance to save everyone. There's another way, Lyraliai said suddenly. If Marcus and I work together, sharing the neural load through our link, we might be able to survive the interface process. But I would have to go with him. Absolutely not, Queen Estra said immediately. I will not lose my daughter to such a desperate gambit. Mother, Lyraliai replied with quiet dignity, you raised me to believe that with great privilege comes great responsibility. How can I ask others to die for me if I am not willing to risk my own life to save them? The argument that followed was brief, but intense. In the end, it was Marcus who settled the matter. Your Majesty, with respect, this isn't your choice to make. Lyraliai is an adult, and she's right about the neural link being our best chance of success. Besides, he added with a grim smile, somebody needs to keep me from doing anything too stupid. 10 minutes later, Marcus and Lyraliai were sealed inside a vegan stealth pod barely larger than a coffin. The technology was based on quantum phase manipulation, making them effectively invisible to conventional sensors. But the trip to the Hegemony flagship would take them through the middle of the most intense space battle in galactic history. The pod was launched during a particularly fierce exchange between the Coalition and Hegemony fleets, using the energy discharges from exploding ships to mask their approach. Marcus had never felt so helpless, strapped into a vessel he couldn't control, watching plasma bolts and missiles streak past their transparent hull. I can feel your fear, Lyraliai whispered through their link. Which fear? Marcus replied with dark humor. The fear of dying in space, the fear of failing everyone, or the fear that even if we succeed, the neural interface will scramble our brains? All of them, Lyraliai replied softly. But I can also feel your determination. You will not let innocent people die if you can prevent it. Their approach to the entropy's edge was harrowing. The massive dreadnought was easily 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and defensive systems. But the vegan stealth technology held, and they managed to attach their pod to a maintenance port on the ship's hull. Breaking into the Hegemony vessel was surprisingly easy. Their security was focused on preventing large-scale attacks, not individual infiltrators. Marcus and Lyraliai made their way through corridors filled with beings that looked like living nightmares, creatures bred for war and conquest. The ship's command center was located deep within the vessel, protected by layers of automated defenses and guard posts. But Marcus's enhanced senses, augmented by his connection to Lyraliai, allowed them to avoid most of the security measures. When they finally reached the central computer core, Marcus was amazed by its alien architecture. The Hegemony's technology was based on biological neural networks, living computer systems that grew rather than being built. Interfacing with such a system would be like trying to merge his consciousness with an alien brain. Are you ready? Lyraliai asked, preparing to establish the neural link that would allow them to work together. Marcus nodded, though he wasn't sure anyone could be ready for what they were about to attempt. As the biomechanical interface tendrils emerged from the Hegemony system, he felt Lyraliai's presence strengthen in his mind, lending him her expertise and sharing the burden of the connection. The moment their consciousness touched the Hegemony network, Marcus understood why their species had been so successful. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it was actively malevolent, designed to dominate and corrupt everything it touched. He felt the system trying to overwhelm his mind with visions of conquest and destruction, attempting to convert him to the Hegemony's cause. But Lyraliai's presence in his thoughts acted as an anchor, her peaceful nature providing a counterbalance to the aggressive alien technology. Together, they began navigating through the ship's systems, searching for the controls to the planet killer weapon. What they found was worse than they had imagined. The weapon wasn't just designed to destroy the Coalition fleet. It was set to sterilize every inhabited world within 50 light-years, including Earth, the vegan homeworld, and dozens of other populated systems. We have to stop this, Marcus said through their link, feeling Lyraliai's horror at the scope of the planned genocide. The weapon's charging sequence is almost complete, Lyralii replied, her consciousness interfacing with the targeting systems. But if we reverse the polarity of the charging matrices, working together, they began sabotaging the superweapon from within, turning its own power against itself. But the hegemony security systems were finally beginning to detect their presence, sending waves of defensive programs to expel the intruders. The battle for control of the weapon became a race against time, with Marcus and Lyralii fighting to complete their sabotage while the ship's defenses tried to stop them. Through their neural link, they shared not just information, but courage, each drawing strength from the other as the alien system assaulted their minds. In the end, it was Marcus's human unpredictability that made the difference. Instead of trying to shut down the weapon safely, he did something the hegemony's designers had never considered. He made it target itself. The explosion that followed could be seen from the Coalition fleet. The hegemony's superweapon, instead of firing on its intended targets, discharged its full power directly into the Entropy's edge. Korthak's flagship simply ceased to exist, vaporized by energies meant to destroy worlds. But Marcus and Lyralii were still aboard when the weapon fired. As the ship began to tear itself apart around them, their only hope was the emergency teleporter built into Lyralii's stealth suit, a device designed for one person, not two. The teleporter can't handle both of us, Lyralii said through their link as explosions rocked the dying ship. Then, we'll have to make it work, Marcus replied, pulling her close as the corridor around them began to buckle and melt. Through their neural connection, they merged their consciousness more completely than ever before, becoming something that was neither fully human nor fully vegan. In that moment of perfect unity, the teleporter activated, translating their combined essence across space in a burst of quantum energy. They materialized aboard the Starlight's edge just as the Entropy's edge completed its self-destruction, the explosion taking most of the hegemony's remaining fleet with it. The few surviving enemy ships, leaderless and demoralized, quickly surrendered to the Coalition forces. But the victory had come at a cost. The neural interface experience had changed both Marcus and Lyralii in ways that no one fully understood. Their consciousness remained partially merged, making them something new in the galaxy, a hybrid being that bridged the gap between two species. As they lay in the medical bay, recovering from their ordeal, Queen Estra stood over them with an expression that mixed relief, concern, and something that might have been pride. "You saved us all," she said quietly. "But at what cost to yourselves?" Marcus and Lyralii looked at each other, their minds still partially linked, and found that they didn't regret the changes that had been forced upon them. They had become something unprecedented, but they had also preserved the freedom of the galaxy. The real question was, what would happen next? The months following the Battle of the Kepler sector brought changes that no one had anticipated. The coalition of free worlds had grown from a desperate alliance into something approaching a galactic government, with representatives from over 100 species working together to rebuild the systems damaged by hegemony aggression. But the most significant changes were happening to Marcus and Lyralii themselves. Their neural link, rather than fading over time, had grown stronger and more complex. They could share thoughts, memories, and emotions with an intimacy that made them effectively two aspects of a single consciousness. Dr. Salas had spent weeks studying their condition, trying to understand the implications. "What you have become is unprecedented," the vegan physician explained during one of their sessions. "Your human neural patterns have integrated with vegan biotechnology to create something entirely new. You are no longer quite human, princess, nor are you quite vegan, Marcus. You're something else, a bridge between species." This transformation had not gone unnoticed by Queen Estra. The vegan monarch had been watching her daughter's changes with growing concern, particularly as it became clear that Marcus and Lyralii could no longer exist independently of each other for extended periods. The crisis came when Queen Estra announced her decision regarding Marcus's fate. "You have served the coalition admirably," she said during a formal ceremony aboard the Starlight's edge. "Your courage and sacrifice will be remembered throughout the galaxy. As a reward for your service, you are hereby granted full citizenship in the vegan dominion and offered a position as a military advisor." It should have been an incredible honor. Citizenship in the vegan dominion was rarely granted to outsiders, and the position offered would make Marcus one of the most influential beings in the galaxy. But there was a catch that became apparent when Queen Estra continued. However, given the unique circumstances of a neural link with my daughter, it would be best if you remained aboard the flagship permanently. For both your safety and hers, separation from vegan space would be inadvisable. Marcus felt Lyraliai's shock and anger through their link, but his own reaction was one of grim understanding. The Queen was essentially placing him under house arrest, keeping him close enough to maintain Lyraliai's stability, but preventing him from returning to human space. Mother, Lyraliai protested. You cannot simply imprison Marcus because his presence is convenient for my condition. I am thinking of what is best for both of you, Queen Estra replied firmly. The neural link makes you vulnerable when separated. What would happen if Marcus returned to his salvage operations and encounter hostile forces? What would happen to you if the link was severed by his death? It was a logical argument, but it ignored the fundamental issue of choice. Marcus had never sought the neural changes that bound him to Lyraliai, but he had accepted them as the price of saving innocent lives. Now he was being told that those changes had cost him his freedom. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, I appreciate the honor you're offering, but I need to know, am I free to decline? The pause that followed was answer enough. That night, as the starlight's edge drifted through hyperspace, Marcus stood in his assigned quarters and contemplated his situation. Through their link, he could feel Lyraliai's distress at her mother's decision, but also her conflicted loyalty between her family and her feelings for him. Their relationship had grown far beyond the neural link that bound them. Over the months of recovery and reconstruction, they had discovered that their personalities complemented each other perfectly. Marcus's practical, straightforward nature balanced Lyraliai's diplomatic sophistication, while her compassion and wisdom tempered his sometimes reckless courage. But love built on mutual imprisonment wasn't really love at all. You're thinking of leaving, Lyraliai said, entering his quarters without announcement. Their link made privacy difficult, if not impossible. I'm thinking of a lot of things, Marcus replied, not turning from the viewport. Your mother isn't wrong about the dangers, but she's also not right about the solution. Lyraliai joined him at the viewport, and through their link, he felt her inner turmoil. I've been researching our condition, she said quietly. Dr. Salas believes that with time and proper training, we might be able to extend the range of our link. Perhaps even learn to function independently for short periods. And what does your mother think of that research? She has discouraged it. Marcus turned to look at her, seeing the conflict in her shifting eyes. Lyraliai, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly, not just what you think I want to hear. She nodded. If you could choose, if there were no political considerations, no royal duties, no neural link, what would you want? Lyraliai was quiet for a long moment, and through their link, Marcus felt her sorting through layers of emotion and obligation. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I want to explore the galaxy with you, to see the worlds you've described, to meet the people who helped save us. I would want to understand what it means to be free to make my own choices. It was then that Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Then, we're leaving. Marcus, we cannot simply. Yes, we can, Marcus interrupted. Your mother is treating us like prisoners for our own good. But we're adults, and we have the right to make our own mistakes. If the neural link makes us vulnerable, then we learn to deal with that vulnerability. If separation is dangerous, then we learn to extend our range or find other solutions. Through their link, Lyraliai felt his determination and found her own resolve strengthening. My mother will not simply allow us to leave. Then, we don't ask permission. The plan they developed over the next 3 days was audacious in its simplicity. Marcus would use his knowledge of ship systems to disable the Starlight's Edge's sensors temporarily, while Lyraliai would commandeer a fast courier ship from the vessel's hangar bay. They would have perhaps an hour's head start before pursuit could be organized. But on the night they planned to escape, they discovered they weren't the only ones with secrets. Admiral Martinez was waiting for them in the hangar bay, standing beside a ship that Marcus recognized as his own modified Wanderer, apparently retrieved from the debris field and extensively upgraded with both human and vegan technology. Going somewhere? The Admiral asked with a slight smile. Marcus and Lyralii exchanged glances, unsure whether they were about to be arrested or helped. Sarah, Marcus said carefully, this isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like two young people who are tired of being treated like political pawns instead of heroes who save the galaxy. The Admiral's words sent a jolt of hope through both of them. The thing is, Admiral Martinez continued, I've been having similar thoughts about the direction the Coalition is taking. Don't get me wrong. Queen Estra is a good leader and a wise ruler. But she's still thinking like a monarch, not like someone building a true democracy. She gestured toward the Wanderer. Your ship has been upgraded with the latest Coalition technology, shields, weapons, medical facilities, and a communications array that will keep you in contact with friendly forces throughout the galaxy. Consider it a gift from the Independent Worlds Alliance. Sarah, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, Admiral Martinez interrupted. I'm offering. The galaxy is changing, Marcus. The Coalition needs people who understand what it means to choose freedom over safety, cooperation over control. And, right now, that's exactly what you two represent. As they prepared to depart, Lyralii recorded a message for her mother. Not an apology, but an explanation. Mother, I know you will see this as a betrayal of everything you've taught me. But you also taught me that true strength comes from choosing to do what is right, even when it is difficult. I love you, and I love our people, but I cannot serve them from a cage, no matter how beautiful that cage might be. The escape itself was almost anticlimactic. Admiral Martinez's modifications to the security systems gave them a clean departure, and by the time Queen Estra realized what had happened, the Wanderer was already beyond the range of pursuit. But their freedom came at a price. Within hours of their departure, they received an official communication from Queen Estra, broadcast on all Coalition frequencies. Princess Lyralii has been declared missing and is believed to be under the influence of hostile forces. Any citizen who encounters her is to report her location immediately for her own protection. The human Marcus Chun is wanted for kidnapping of a member of the royal family and theft of state secrets. The accusation stung, but it wasn't entirely unexpected. What was surprising was the response from the Coalition's other member species. The Zarathi Council issued a statement supporting the right of individuals to choose their own paths, regardless of their birth status. The Human Independent World Alliance formally refused to recognize the kidnapping charges. Even some vegan colonies expressed doubt about the official narrative. Over the following weeks, as Marcus and Lyralii traveled from system to system, they discovered that their story had become something larger than themselves. They had become symbols of a new way of thinking about freedom and cooperation in the galaxy. Their first stop was the human colony of New Harmony, where they were welcomed as heroes rather than fugitives. The colonists, many of them refugees from various conflicts, understood what it meant to choose freedom over security. You've given hope to people who had forgotten what it felt like, explained Dr. Elena Vasquez, the colony's administrator. The idea that individuals can stand up to authority, even benevolent authority, and choose their own destiny. From New Harmony, they traveled to the Zarathi homeworld, where the crystalline beings had developed new technologies based on data recovered from the hegemony's experiments. The Zarathi offered to study their neural link, hoping to understand how different species might work together more closely. But it was on the gaseous world of Nebula Prime that they made their most important discovery. The beings of the Nebulae Collective had always been mysterious, existing as living clouds of intelligent particles. But they revealed to Marcus and Lyralii that they had been watching the development of their neural link with great interest. You have become something we have long theorized, but never seen, the collective spokesperson explained, its voice a harmonious chord of different tones. Two beings of different species achieving true symbiosis while retaining their individual identities. This is the next step in galactic evolution. The collective offered them something unprecedented, a way to enhance their neural link without losing their independence. The process would allow them to share consciousness across vast distances while still maintaining their individual thought patterns. But why? Lyrelii asked. What do you gain from helping us? We gain proof that the future of the galaxy lies not in conquest or domination, but in cooperation and understanding, the spokesperson replied. You are living evidence that different species can become stronger together than they ever could apart. The enhancement process took 3 weeks and was unlike anything either of them had experienced. Rather than painful neural interfaces, the collective used quantum entanglement to link their consciousness at a subatomic level. When it was complete, Marcus and Lyrelii found that they could share thoughts and feelings across any distance, while still retaining their individual personalities and decision-making abilities. They were no longer dependent on physical proximity to maintain their link. Armed with this new freedom, they made a decision that surprised even themselves. They would return to vegan space and face Queen Estra directly. The journey back to the vegan homeworld took 2 months, during which they received increasingly urgent messages from both allies and enemies. Queen Estra had declared them traitors and criminals, but the coalition's member species were divided on whether to support her position. When they finally arrived at the capital world of Agera, they found the space around the planet filled with ships from dozens of different species. Word of their return had spread, and representatives from across the galaxy had come to witness what many saw as a test case for the future of the coalition. The trial that followed was broadcast throughout known space. Queen Estra presented her case with the dignity and authority of a monarch protecting her subjects, while Marcus and Lyrelii defended their actions as a fundamental exercise of individual freedom. But the real moment of truth came when Lyrelii addressed the assembled representatives directly. Your Majesties, presidents, and councils, she said, standing before beings from 100 different worlds, we stand at a crossroads. We can choose to build a future based on the old ways, where individuals exist to serve the state, where security is more important than freedom, where different species interact but never truly unite. Or we can choose something new. She gestured toward Marcus, and through their link, their shared conviction became almost tangible to the watching crowd. Marcus Chun and I represent more than just 2 individuals who chose love over duty. We represent the possibility that different species can become stronger together than apart, that diversity is a source of strength rather than division, that freedom and cooperation can coexist. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. In the end, it was decided by a vote of the coalition's member species, not on whether Marcus and Lyrelii were guilty of crimes, but on what kind of future the coalition wanted to build. The vote was close but decisive. The coalition chose freedom. Queen Estra, faced with the clear will of her allies, gracefully accepted the decision. In a private meeting with her daughter and Marcus, she admitted that her fears had clouded her judgment. I was so afraid of losing you, she told Lyrelii, that I forgot the most important lesson I ever tried to teach you, that love without freedom is not love at all. Marcus and Lyrelii were officially pardoned and welcomed back into the coalition as full citizens with the right to travel freely throughout its territory. But more importantly, their story had helped establish new principles for how the coalition would operate, based on individual choice and voluntary cooperation rather than top-down authority. 1 year later, Marcus and Lyrelii stood on the observation deck of a new kind of starship, the first vessel designed jointly by human and vegan engineers, crewed by beings from dozens of different species, and dedicated to exploration rather than war. Their neural link, enhanced by collective technology, allowed them to coordinate the ship's operations with unprecedented efficiency. But it also gave them something more precious, the ability to share the wonder of discovery as they explored new worlds and met new species. Do you ever regret it? Lyrelii asked as they watched a binary star system paint rainbow colors across the ship's hull. Giving up your old life for this? Marcus considered the question, feeling through their link the contentment and joy that filled both their minds. I didn't give up my old life, he replied. I just found a better one. Behind them, the mixed crew of the starship continued their work. Humans and vegans, Zarathi and collective beings, former enemies now working together to build a future that none of them could have imagined alone. The galaxy was changing, one choice at a time, one partnership at a time, one act of courage at a time. And at the center of it all were two beings who had learned that the greatest strength came not from standing alone, but from choosing to stand together. The hegemony had been defeated, but something far more important had been born in its place. Proof that different species could not just coexist, but truly unite while still maintaining their individual identities. It was, Marcus thought as he felt Lyraliai's love and joy through their shared consciousness, exactly the kind of future worth fighting for. The stars ahead held infinite possibilities, and they would explore them together.